Hey listeners, welcome to Baggage Claim. I'm your host, Lauren Osborne. Today's episode, I'm joined by my friend Keisha, and we are going to be talking about energy vampires. Yes, the Collins from What We Do in the Shadows. This was something that Keisha wanted to talk about because I think it's been weighing heavy on her and she wanted to lighten the load. Trigger warning, in this episode, we do have a conversation and we mention the incident happening with Keke Palmer and her domestic violence and emotional abuse. There is also a mention in Keisha's story about suicidal thoughts. So please listen and handle yourself with care. I want to let you know that I appreciate you listening to my podcast, Baggage Claim. If you want more information on me or the podcast, check out my website, checkyourbags.com, or follow me on Instagram, which is checkinyourbaggage. I hope you guys enjoy the episode and have a great day. Hey listeners, welcome to Baggage Claim. I'm your host, Lauren Osborne. And as we know on this podcast, it is the spot where everyone has baggage. We just decide to examine the contents of our luggage. And each episode, we pick something to check in, and then we pick a souvenir to bring with us. And the goal of each episode is to feel a little lighter after you listen. So I have a very special guest. We'll call her a California dream. That's what we'll do, right? Because I've been trying, right? Like my last recording, I called her a Southern Belle, right? For an intro. So we have a California dream here, a transplant. Keisha, welcome.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for the introduction. And as one of our lovely friends, Brittany calls me Cali Keisha, which I'm like, I could go with that.
Brittany who talks like super, super fast, Brittany, right?
Yes,
I adore her.
It's such a Cali thing. And I have to tell her, like, I'll be talking to her. I was like, wait, girl. I was like, slow it down. Because I was like, what did you say? I need to catch the details. But it's so funny because me and all my little Cali friends, mainly like sometimes SoCal friends, as now we talk fast. And like, you two grow up in that culture, you have to just understand that we're like, and then you know? And
right.
So people are often like, if you're from the South or Midwest, you're like, wait, what?
Okay, it's literally like the coast, right? Like it'll be the West Coast, like Cali, especially SoCal. I got to be like, oh, I've got to really focus, right? So if I've missed it, I've got to stop them right there before we keep going in this conversation because I've missed it, and we'll do steps back. And then same for East Coast, right? There, but not Southeast Coast, Northeast Coast, Northeast.
Yes.
And they always say mid-sentence, da-da-da-da-da. And you're like, okay, wait a second. What? Let's go back. But I found like my way to the middle because I lived in Florida, slower pace of like the countant. Is that the word for it? Like cadence. It's definitely slower. So, well, thank you so much for joining me for this podcast. Do our icebreakers and introduction, shall we? So, okay, if you were going to give yourself a short bio, right? A paragraph of Keisha, what would it be?
I would definitely say someone who is adventurous, outgoing, sociable, and solution oriented. Like I'm one of those people that I'm very resourceful. So a lot of people tend to use my special knowledge, which I have no problem with giving at times. And also, I'm a good time. So a lot of people like to use my sacred energy and use it to their benefit, which I have no problem with the right company. But sometimes the wrong company can pull that and drain you of that sacred energy. So I have to be super careful of how I how I give it out. But I definitely would say I am that girl that a lot of people like to go out with. If you want to have a good time, you want a good laugh, you just want to forget about everything else that's going on in the world. Like, let's go out, let's party. Anybody who goes out with me, like, exhibited last night. Well, I would definitely say, as you mentioned before, I am from California. I'm definitely an
There's
adventurous,
my
seeking
dog.
out, outgoing social butterfly. I came to know you by way of my ex-boyfriend. He was the one that kind of brought me to Texas,
Mm.
Dallas, Texas specifically. So as I got out here, we were in a long distance relationship during the
Hmm.
pandemic. I was in LA, he was in Detroit. We decided Dallas was the city that will come here together. And so being in this new space, I needed to connect with other young Black professionals. And
Hmm.
I joined a particular social group, and that's how I met you and other
Yes.
lovely ladies. And, just been on my little like journey of really kind of adulting on my own without,
Hmm.
immediate family nearby. Really enjoying life and just kind of like writing my next chapter, what my life is going to be. I just
Hmm.
turned 39 last Thursday, November 2nd
Happy
birthday. Woo
belated.
woo.
Whoop
Thank
whoop.
you. Scorpio season is in full effect.
You're officially
Um
here. And I wonder if it feels like a sexy season right now. I feel like when I'm
it
out, I'm just feeling
does.
like, rah.
Girl, I'm telling you all the feels and all the buns, and it's like, ooh, and I just came from Miami, and I was like, well, I'm just feeling this whole little vibe. So yeah, that is my quick bio. That's how I got here. Currently working on doing some other new business ventures and always working on, just really pursuing my passions and not wasting my time on this earth and
Yeah.
living my life the best I can while I'm here.
Hell yes. Well, I mean, listen, if you ever want to hop across, the pond sometime, I might be heading across. So if you ever like
I
new chapter, eat,
know.
pray, love, like maybe. Okay, let's get to these icebreakers. Okay, so question one. Okay, let's start out with a good one. What does joy look like to you?
Joy for me looks like being able to wake up and just being content where I'm at in life and being able to do what I want when I want with no regrets,
Hmm.
no worries, no overanalyzation about how the day is going to go, no, over evaluating what people think of me, just really going out and living my life to the fullest for that day and not having any worries or regrets.
I love that. Okay. When was the last time you felt joy?
I definitely felt joy. I would say literally a few hours ago. I was out
Yes.
partying. I was out partying at Stir in Addis, and I just remember like being in the scene. I just got back from Miami, and so when you take a vacation, like it's just a reminder of how much you need to just take more time for yourself to see some world,
A
no matter if
reset.
it's no matter if that reset is like domestically reset or like internationally reset, but just
Hmm.
to see a different culture, see another world. I'd never been to Miami. So I came back to Dallas with that mindset of like, I just want to go and dine on some
Hmm.
good food and mingle. And that was the
Hmm.
energy I carried. And so when I went to go party at Stir, I remember just going up to the bar, they're playing a good song, I'm shaking my ass, The guy next to me was just like, I just love your vibe, I love your energy. What are you drinking? Giving me something to drink. And then we just danced the whole 2 hours. Like that
Hmm.
was like my dance partner, and it was just pure joy. And he was dancing, and he was doing his moves. I was doing my moves. We were just like playing off of each other and singing certain songs that was part of our era as older millennials. And it's like, oh, you remember this? You remember this? Which is
Right?
always bringing me back to like high school, college, always good times. So for me, dancing is like my stress reliever. Some people
Shake
choose
it like a shell
alcohol,
shaker.
right? And I choose dancing, and that is for me pure joy.
I love that. Okay. Question two for the icebreakers. So our listeners will get to know you. What did emotions look like in your home growing up?
I will say like emotions growing up, I used to be really shy, but I was
That's
always like
shocking to me. I just want to throw
I
that out there. It is, it's
yeah.
definitely shocking.
I was a shy kid, but at home I raised hell. So I was the middle child. I was very attention seeking. And I would just kind of like mess around with my brothers and sisters all the time and
Hmm.
just like fool with them. And most people say, like, I could literally admit, like, yes, sometimes I would bully my sister. She's older than me.
Hmm.
So I was a weaker link, so I could bully her. I'm like the annoying younger sister, who wants to pick on her
Hmm.
older sister. And then I'm like, oh, I got a younger brother too. I can mess with him as well. But emotions, I will say I was very loud. I was very sassy.
Hmm.
Um, I think of Kim Kardashian's stories about Northwest and what she would say to her, and I would say things like that to my mom. I was really sassy.
Mm-hmm.
And very outspoken.
So
And
were
I
you
got whooped a
shy
lot.
at school and
I
then
was mainly,
really outgoing at home?
yes,
Okay.
that's what it
Okay.
was. It was like my outdoor persona was like, I don't know you, who are these people? I'm just going to be quiet and observe. And it kind of like how I am now. I kind of observe people before I kind of approach them,
Mm-hmm.
right? To see how they're doing and like what's the best way to like engage in conversation. But
Mm-hmm.
at home, I was like, this is it. This is my domain. Like I'm running this house, you know? I
Mm-hmm.
was, and that's why I would get in trouble a lot and get my fair share of whoopings because I was always challenging my parents.
Mm-hmm.
So I will
Even like in
say,
middle school, high
yeah,
school?
middle school was tough for me. I went through a really tough time in seventh grade where I was like put into a different school. I went to the same school from like first through sixth, and then I moved to a different middle school for seventh grade, and I didn't do well. I didn't mix well with the kids there. Got slightly talked about, little bullied, and I became really suicidal. And
Mm-hmm.
started hanging around with like other peers that were also kind of like having suicidal thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, by towards the end of that year, I got out of that mindset, and just had a new lease on life.
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize I skipped half a second grade. And so I was always the youngest kid. Like I graduated high school at 16, going on
Oh, wow.
17
I had
senior year.
no idea.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
was 12 years old in
Wow.
high school. I was 12 going on 13 in high school, but people always assumed I was like older because of just how I spoke and how I carried
Mm-hmm.
myself. And I was like, I sometimes would just lie because I just to fit in. I was like, I'm 13, going on 14, but I was really 12.
During
Um,
that very hard time, not to make light of it, but could I ask?
mhm,
Because I think of some of my angsty times in
mhm.
those years. What song was playing on repeat on the mix CD?
At that time, probably Bush Machine Head. Like I think of Cranberries
Mm-hmm.
Linger. I think of like Cranberries Dream. Hip hop wise, it was probably something like the Fugees, like 98,
Mm-hmm.
MC Light. I had a really eclectic mix of
Avril Lavigne's first album.
okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So this was like
Um,
emo before emo was a thing. And I have to remind people
yes,
like emo was a thing. We just didn't call it that. It was alternative
right.
rock.
Alternative. We'll go with that. Okay. Third question, and then we can hop into the baggage. The third one is, what is one thing that you would want the world to know about?
Oh God, that's such a good question. I would definitely want the world like something personal about me or like an inspirational quote for the
Whatever
world.
you want whatever you want it to be. Like, let's
I w-
say an asteroid's coming, right? And everyone got a letter or everyone had a description, like one thing. It doesn't have to be only one, but something that you'd want the world to know.
I would want the world to know to keep pushing, keep going, find a solution, find cover. But that just because the media is screaming at you that the world is over doesn't mean that your personal world has to be over. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Anytime you get stuck and you feel like all is lost, challenge your mind to get out of that rabbit hole way of thinking and to
Mhm.
push through to the other side.
Then what's something that you'd want them to know about you?
I would definitely want people to know that I am one of those people that is always looking at the glass halfway full.
Yeah.
I am someone who likes to foster genuine relationships with people and add value to people's lives. That is
Mhm.
probably like my biggest superpower is not only having a degree of empathy for people who are going through and compassion, but
Mhm.
being able to help people out of certain situations through my resources and by
Mhm.
adding value, whether that value is speaking a good word, whether that value is connecting people with like the right person to help them achieve their goals,
Mhm.
or whether that value is like helping someone meet some, goal that seems impossible with a work assignment. I think of all the people I helped when I was styling, and they always said, like, this could not have happened if you weren't here.
Mhm.
And I think for me, that just brings me the greatest joy and confirms my gift of
Mhm.
like adding value and making people's lives better just by me being in their presence or me being able to add like additional help to whatever goal they need to achieve.
I like that. If I was going to pick an adjective for how you described it, you're like an enhancer. You're
Elevate.
there. Yeah, you just like elevate it, which is very cool. And I feel thankful to know you. So
Thank you. Thank you.
you're very welcome. Okay, final question. This week, what was your rose and what was your thorn?
I want to say this week my rose was being able to connect with someone on a dating app that had similar goals, similar ways of thinking, similar baggage that
Mm-hmm.
we both overcame.
Mm-hmm.
And we overcame by going through the right channels, like using therapy as a means to get better,
Mm-hmm.
using therapy as a means to really process things in the right way and not overanalyze, but really accepting what happened, moving
Mm-hmm.
on, and moving
Mm-hmm.
on in a better light. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, that was like the rose and my aha refreshing moment to end my week out. My thorn was really, oh God, it's almost like a personal attack on myself. My thorn was getting in my own way of almost self-sabotaging my progress.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I'm going to cosmetology school and I have to be there by a certain time. And I know what
Mm-hmm.
time I need to log off for work and do everything I need to get there. I'll dilly dally. And I remember I was out on vacation in Miami and my boss was like, "Oh, I can see now why you give yourself so much time to get ready in the morning. Sometimes you dilly dally." And I didn't take offense to that. But I remember
Mm-hmm.
thinking internally, like, do I dilly dally? Like, is that a thing? And I was like, hmm. And I started to really go about my week and realize that I often do dilly dally and I don't have a great sense of urgency like I should. And so I will say twice this week, I was late, like late to the point I couldn't even clock in and get certain hours for school.
Mm-hmm.
And my thorn, like I said, typically would come externally from someone, but it was almost internally to where I'm like, I think I'm purposely self sabotaging my progress and just not really understanding why I do it. And so that is something I kind of like exploring and like working on going
Mm-hmm.
forward.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. I feel like that's that's a whole another episode.
Oh, thank you.
Because I hear that. I'm wishing you all the luck.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you. Before we can,
you.
right? Like, let's do some real time, yes, let's do this. Don't forget, like I said on my last episode, guys, call for a ceasefire, call your senators, call your congressmen. This is out of control. This is out of control. Free Palestine till it's backwards, free the Congo, and free Sudan. Now let's get, and that's like the world news that we need to know. Also, I'll also have a link in the episode notes for this episode. The people of Gaza really just need clean water. If anything, there's a link. If you can donate, do it. If you can't, just give. I don't want your thoughts and prayers. I want you out there with a sign at a rally. I want you to be boycotting Starbucks or something. Mickey D's, Disney.
And see, I was just aware of the Starbucks controversy, right? Because they brought in a super good flavor, the new gingerbread iced chai, and I was like, oh my God, I rarely drink Starbucks. I happened to be at the airport in, Miami, and I was like, ooh, this is good. So I've been having it like twice this week, which is unheard of, but thank you for being informative because I was like, why are we both trying Starbucks? I had no idea. No idea.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, let's stop the genocide. Let's cease fire now. Keep your voices loud. Stay in it. Don't lose momentum. Try to share any post that you can. Also, I don't want to say breaking news because this isn't news. This is a fucking scary situation and a prime example of an energy vampire because the news broke out about our girl. You know, it's your girl, Keke Palmer. It's very upsetting that she has filed a restraining order and was granted it, also granted sole custody of her 8-month-old son from her ex-boyfriend and father of her son, Darius Jackson, who she let us know. For me, it's not alleged. Once I saw the still shots, it's not alleged that there was domestic abuse and controlling emotional abuse happening in the relationship. And it's upsetting because that's our girl. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are number one, I saw it coming when he publicly shamed her for what she was wearing at the Usher comment. I
Yes.
have been in an emotionally abusive relationship twice over,
Mm-hmm.
back to back, in my late 20s. And
Mm-hmm.
I will say this, that like I never took that lightly. I never saw
Mm-hmm.
it as like, oh, he's just commenting because he's concerned.
No.
Bullshit. I was like, a controlling motherfucker when you see it, when you've been
Mm-hmm.
through those situations. And I knew it was more to it than that. I was like, something is not right. For him
Right.
to go on a public platform to take a private comment in a private conversation and try to make
Mm-hmm.
it go viral, to have other men publicly shame this woman and other women
Yes.
publicly shame this woman was a problem and a way to manipulate her and make her feel so low about herself. And so when
Yes.
it came out that it was domestic abuse happening, I was like, oh,
It
I
made
knew.
sense. It made sense.
Yes.
Even when I really, first it was his comment right at her show, but then it was the one right after that was like, people say it's a crime for the man of the family to like want his wife or whatever. Like, bro, no one knows you and you're not married.
Right. And
And
you're
what
probably
you're
living off of her anyways. Like, let's keep it
right.
100.
But like I have too been in those emotionally abusive relationships where they try to like mess with your head. I mean, when you read the report, one of the things that really got to me was the sleep deprivation, how he yelled at her all night so she would not sleep. Like
Yes.
that
Been there,
is
done that. Been
right.
there.
It was too close to home.
Too
And
close.
it is a pattern of abuse. And I'm this is how we know that I think Keke is really done, because she put the information out there. She is like, that's how you deal with it. Like, you can't keep it a secret, because she's been protecting this man for almost 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's an energy vampire. Like, he would not be happy for her successes. He would criticize her and, try to control what she's wearing. And it's so upsetting, because we knew that there were red flags, and we knew even with his brother who was on Insecure, like he has some things out there about him. And
the apple does not fall far from the tree. I'll say that.
And I hate that it had to be Keke. She's a private girl. I'm sorry. She's not a person that's like, put me in the blogs. She's not like Krishan or whatever. Like, it's not that. And the fact that her mother got on the internet, for God's sake.
And I've worked with them before. Miss Sharon
really?
is amazing. Yeah, I was like, back when I was interning, and
Mm-hmm.
I should have put this in my bio. I used to do wardrobe styling for 4 years in LA before I moved out here. So I would, work with a lot of different celebrities, music artists. And I remember her mother is so sweet. So sweet. And I remember she gave me like the best compliment being on set. So sweet. Keke as well. So sweet. Complete joy. And so when her mother got involved and I saw the level of angst her mother had, like they have been fed up to here. It was like, this can no longer go down. And we are protecting her at all costs. And we're not standing for you publicly shaming her anymore. We're not standing for your lies and manipulation on social media. It is over. This is done. And we're doing something about it.
And and it's scary, because when he wrote like, "See you soon, son," your baby's 8 months old. He can't read. What is that supposed to mean? Like, are you threatening her? Like, what is that supposed to mean? And I just want to give all the positive energy and good vibes and liberation to Keke and her son Leo, and protection. I mean, they said the police were called. I don't know why there aren't charges. And yeah, that's our energy vampire of the week, Darius Jackson, of the year. And for all those people who were defending him when he tried to humiliate Keke.
Right.
Just
the gas face.
Right. Like that. I mean, I can only be quiet about that, because I would consider doing some self-reflection.
Yeah. But I think also the women too.
Oh my gosh. I heard some of the lives on TikTok and I was so disgusted. It was like, why would she have to do anything to,
It's like, why is her outfit even a conversation? Like, you're in Vegas, you show skin. And even if she wasn't in Vegas, who cares where she's at?
I wore an outfit almost identical to hers literally when I was in Vegas last weekend. Like,
girl,
get out of
I
here.
wanted an outfit like hers. I was looking for that for Miami, honey.
And I loved how she was able to, profit off of that and be like, I'm a mother. And now that's the scary part is, she paid the price for that.
She did. I was like, I look at that whole Usher song, the boyfriend song so differently at the end now, because she was masking pain. She tried to turn a tragic moment into, a celebration, a great song, a laughable moment. And she was really masking pain. And as anyone who's been through those emotional relationships, you're always trying to protect the abuser, right? We know at all costs, you just want to save that person, even if it's to your own detriment, right? Right. And so I look at it so differently with a whole different set of lens. And
yes,
my heart goes out to her. But when the news broke, my first thought was like, I knew it. Because you know the signs. And I don't write stuff off like that lightly, because when you've been through it, it's like, oh no, you read in between the lines way too well. I was like, there's something more there. This is not a first time thing.
And then they broke up and then they got back together. And that was the other thing, was like,
yeah.
And I also know that
how did he wheel her back in? That's
the family.
Like, how did
you need to be a family. She, wants the ideal family. There's a lot of reasons why people will stay. And then also people think it'll be just so much worse. He'll just make my life miserable. And some narcissists do that. Some, vampire, energy vampires do that until they find a new, succubus or whatever. So, but yeah, I don't want to go too much on a tangent, but, big up to Keke Palmer, wishing you all the healing and the freedom and the best. Call for a ceasefire now. That is a good way to lead into our episode today, which the baggage that we are going to be talking about are energy vampires, right? And kind of the effect that they have on you, how kind of you navigate that, and how you end up being the piece of garlic for yourself.
I love that. I was like, it feels you brought me back to like horror movies from my childhood, like garlic and the sun coming up and
right. And I feel like I love garlic seasoning, and that's all I could really think of quickly. And so
I was like, what about the steak? Come on, Lauren, there's a steak involved.
Oh, that's right. You know what it
Buffy.
is, and
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
It's true. And part of me like doesn't want that, because I saw a teaser for season 2 of Interview with the Vampire that's on AMC Plus, and I'm like,
is it good?
It is. Oh my God, it's so good.
I've heard good things about it.
I ended up getting AMC because I saw one episode for free, and I was like, wait, I've got to finish this. And I just felt like the chemistry, all of that was really good. But I think the girl, I'm going on we could talk about that later. Let's dig into, the real life ones, not the beautiful actors that are playing it on the show, but the energy vampires in real life. So if you were going to say, if someone had never heard of the term energy vampire, how would you describe it?
Someone who is like self-centered and who really just like sucks your energy dry. Like, one of my superpowers, and maybe one of your superpowers as well, we can all relate, is that, we could be really good listeners, right? Some people would know that, they'll take advantage of that. And they'll use you to be their forever sounding board, right? And it's not always like, oh, I just need to like get this off my chest. You got time for a quick conversation. I could give an example of someone I talked to, and I could be in a 2-hour conversation. And out of that 2-hour conversation, they talked for a period of 40 minutes, right? And then I had 5 minutes to talk and interject my opinion. And then they continued for another 40 minutes. And then I got my 5 minutes in, and then they continued for another 40 minutes until it was like, you know what? I have to go and get off this conversation, because now I'm exhausted. And I'm exhausted not because, I'm just tired from my day. I'm exhausted because you are taking advantage of my ability to listen and just unload on me without even taking time to realize, does Keisha even want to hear this entire story? Would Keisha like to have some buy-in into this story by even asking for her participation? at
Mm-hmm.
times. You're just unloading for 40 minutes straight and thinking I have the time and capacity to deal with that. And I was like, no, I'm not getting paid to sit here and listen to you vent. At
Right.
this point, I'm going to start charging you $4.99 a minute, and you can call me Miss Cleo because I was like, I am not here for this. I can refer you to a therapist if this is what you're seeking.
Yes. I feel like for me, I think of like, well, as it's described, like, yes. I guess my question is, do you think an energy vampire knows that they're an energy vampire? Do you
They
think
have
that
no idea.
and in your experience, do you think that if you were like, hey, you're Collin from, oh my God, what's the show? I love it so much. It's going to come to me. What We Do in the Shadows. That's the show.
Mm.
um, I guess I feel like I've experienced it. Part of me questions if I've ever been an energy vampire. It makes me wonder. And we'll call it EV, right? Like while we go through this. But I honestly, if I have, my bad. I mean, I hope I wasn't, but I don't, maybe I have been, right? I'm really trying to do this thing where I've got to be really open to like, maybe that's what I gave at a time. But hopefully not. But I think that sometimes you don't even recognize it until like you get off a call with someone or you step away from the conversation and you actually physically do feel drained. Like you feel tired. Me personally, I thought, well, that is how you are a friend, right? Like you are a listening ear, right? Even, I mean, I saw it, right? You give like your advice or whatever, but sometimes, it's just people and they are who they are. And I'm like, yes, and they can be who they are, but if it's draining me, if I'm tired, if it's taking a toll, they can be who they are and I can be who I am. And that is with some space, right?
Yes, and just to add to that, because I was like, let me like kind of Google, the definition for like people who just kind of want to get a better idea. So like, energy vampires are people who like sap your emotional energy, either intentionally or unconsciously. They could be friends, family members, partners, colleagues, neighbors, but they feed on your care and attention and can leave you feeling like stressed, drained, exhausted, and overwhelmed. And that's the thing. It's kind of like, I don't mind being a sounding board, I mean, sorry, like listening to my friends, as they unload on me for different things. There's a time and place for that, right? But at the
Right.
same time, if I feel like you are purposely using my gift of being able to be a sincere listener to your problems and taking advantage of that, to where now I feel drained, I no
Mm-hmm.
longer want to be around you. I have to give myself time limits and how I talk with you. You are now becoming an energy vampire. And people forget how it can affect your health and overall well being. Think about
Mm-hmm.
it, Lauren, if you were dating a man, right? And like you were in this amazing relationship with this guy, and he got to a point to where he got so comfortable with you to where now he felt like you're like his personal therapist. And like he's just there to unload all the emotional baggage in his life. At first, you're
Mm-hmm.
like, this is cute. Oh, thank you. You
Right.
trust me enough. Oh my God, I feel so special. But
Mm-hmm.
now it's like all the time your conversations revolve around you and your emotional baggage. And you never ask me how my day was. How am I
Mm-hmm.
feeling? Do I even have the emotional capacity to listen to these stories every time I talk to you? Now, this person has unconsciously become this energy vampire, and it's up to me to really call it out, see
Mm-hmm.
it, correct the issue, and do something about it. Because my time is not here to be wasted. Our time on this phone conversation is just as valuable as each other's. No
Mm-hmm.
one should be trumping the other and having reciprocity in this conversation. So while I can appreciate someone coming to me for their problems, let me have a moment to have buy-in. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
say for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, tell me your problem, but even ask me, Keisha, what do you think about this?
Mm-hmm.
Check in with me. Check in with me to see if I'm even still there. Ask me my opinion on the subject, but to just unload and unload and unload and unload, it's like you almost forget that I have a life,
Mm-hmm.
that I may be going through something today, and I don't have the capacity to listen and be emotionally drained because I got 10 other things that have to be done today. And I can't stop after this conversation.
I feel that. So, okay, if we were looking at baggage, right? Because it sounds like I can hear like your sound of release, like you're done with that. Like you're done with the energy vampires, right? I feel like, do you ever ask, like, how did I get here? And the example that you just described, do you still communicate with this person anymore?
That particular person, no.
Mhm. Okay, I was hoping that because you were like held to the no.
We got into it over like a text exchange about something different. But even in the text exchange, I was trying to call because I was like, this is like spiraling.
Mhm.
And when you try to call someone who just wants to unload on text with you, right? And they're just like, no, no, let me just keep unloading on you with text. It's like we're not getting nowhere, and we're just
Right.
circumventing. And so, we got to a point where we both mentioned like, lose my number, stop calling me, like, don't contact me ever again. And it
Oh,
was
wow.
someone that I had met previously that I was like, someone you were kind of dating, courting for a while, still kept
Mhm.
in touch because they were cool. But at the end of the day, I was like, I really don't need to reach out to this person because I noticed when they reach out to me, it's almost really to ask me advice about dating, and what do you think about this situation with this girl,
That's a little
or it's like,
insulting, right?
right. Or it's like, oh, I just wrote a new book. Can you buy it? Can you go online and write a review? Number one, did you even ask if I was interested in the content that you're writing? Number two, did you ever ask what I have going on in my life? Do I always have the time to write a Amazon review for it? You want me to just write a bunch of lies just so you could have like really good reviews? Like, did you ever even think that I was part of your target market for your book before you reached out to me and asked the question? So no,
No.
I'm not in contact with that person anymore.
So I guess if you were examining the contents, like how would you get here? And when did you decide, absolutely no, I'm done, right? I feel like we've kind of already talked about this before, right? I feel like your birthday just passed. And I feel like, I always say that I'm trying to say something else besides I feel. I feel like at first you don't recognize that you are actually you've become like someone's fuel. I think sometimes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but it does make me question I guess when it gets to the point where you're like, you're Dracula. Were you always Dracula? You know what I mean? Like, was this your intention from the jump? Which was, I guess part of the thing is when I feel like someone is an energy vampire, I also get this feeling of being taken advantage of, right?
Yeah,
And sometimes it's emotionally like they've hit the threshold. I've hit the threshold of what I'm able to give. I've talked about the demanding friendship, like that person, and I don't communicate anymore because it was definitely like every problem. She reminded me, I hate to say it, but like of Eeyore, right? Just down, right? Just,
girl,
or
I'm
the
thinking of
song
a
like,
hunchback of
like
like.
nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Like that's what it feels like. And I'm willing and able to be like open and give, right? But I think part of it, and I think energy can be transferred as well. I truly believe that. So sometimes when I say an energy vampire, it's not just a person just like sucking away, right? It's not just a person that's like coming to take. It's also sometimes the energy that the person is giving. Like
True.
sometimes what the person is giving, it's not aligning. it is, I can't match that because some of it you may think are like, oh, it's just I'm opinion or controversial, but really it's a nastiness. The rumors and the nastiness. And if you watch Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, you'll get it. But I think that also could be, I think that is a sign that you should also look for that is also draining. You know what I mean? If there's a person with like negative energy that's just like, just meh. I mean, I think it could rub off on you. And I think that it could also take a toll, especially when it's like, I'm not really like that. So I don't know if I'm pretending or I'm just trying to give like consistent benefits of the doubt.
And that's a good way to even check in with yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we have a perception of who we are. And one thing one of my friends always says is like, well, this is how I experience you, right? I know you think you're one way, but this is how I experience who you are. And sometimes it's helpful to check in with yourself because, yeah, sometimes you unconsciously can be that energy vampire based on just your environment, culturally, what you saw growing up, what you thought was acceptable, and how you communicate with people. Um, for me, coming into my 39th year of life, I wanted to really change some things about myself and whatever no longer served me and was making me be something I wasn't had to go,
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to really check to see who was wasting my time. So like I said, my time is so short. I'm working 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., right? Online from home. And then I hightail it 38 miles to the other side of town and go to cosmetology school from 6 to 10. My time
Mm-hmm.
is so short. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, my emotional capacity, like I need to make sure it's at a great place of almost overflow because I only
Mm-hmm.
have so much energy to give to everybody each day. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things I try to like really impress upon is that check in with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
ask yourself, is there reciprocity in your personal and professional relationships, and how can I improve upon that?
Mm-hmm.
And when someone blatantly, honestly tells you how they experience you, it can definitely be a call to action, right? I remember I wasn't always this way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't always vibrate super high, super energy, even though I know I could be with certain people, but sometimes I would like close it off, right? In the public
Mm-hmm.
eye. And I took a Dale Carnegie course, which was life change for me in
Mm-hmm.
2011. Had a corporate job. I was like really short, stressed, and snappy with people in email. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you want to ask me a question. I'm like, that's just a stupid question. I wouldn't say that in email, but I
Mm-hmm.
would just respond in a super sassy manner. And my manager got wind of it. She was like, Keisha, what is going on with how you're responding to people? I'm getting complaints. And she suggested this course by Dale Carnegie about how to communicate with difficult people. And
Mm-hmm.
in that, I learned this magic formula of how to communicate with people, right? You only have 2 to 3 minutes to keep someone's attention before they trail off. Me, if you're my audience, Lauren, I have to recognize that like I need to hurry up and keep my point clear and concise, make it before I lose your interest, right? In
Mm-hmm.
this conversation. And so from there, understanding certain principles with Dale Carnegie, never criticize, condemn, or complain. Learn to give positive feedback. Be
Mm-hmm.
enthusiastic when you're responding to people, right? Learning the value of saying someone's name, you know what I'm saying? Smiling,
Mm-hmm.
being able to say no with a smile. Certain principles I learned, right?
Mm-hmm.
To help me communicate with others. And so using these principles, I started to recognize, am I unconsciously being an energy vampire to others? How can I prove upon that? How can I
Mm-hmm.
give people 2 to 3 minutes of my time and make my point clear and concise and then get your buy-in, right? If I'm
Mm-hmm.
having a conversation with you, Lauren, I'm talking about an ex-boyfriend, I'm going to be like, Lauren, what do you think about that? Right?
Right.
I'm not going to go on for 30 minutes and then be like, oh, girl, I got to go. And you're just like, what did she want my opinion? So
Right.
it's really about recognizing those signs and, there's an opportunity for improvement, being able to check in and being able to realize that, like I got 2 to 3 minutes of this person's time to relay my problem, get their buy-in, and then continue to give more details. But I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to spend 30 minutes giving all the details and then leaving my listener just in the dark. leaving them left on silence. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm calling you for a reason because I want your opinion. I value your opinion. So
Right.
let your opinion be valued in this conversation that we're having versus me trying to overrun it the whole time.
So what do you think in the past year has been the biggest lesson on energy vampires for you?
I will say my most recent lesson was learning how to recognize it and not mask it as like, oh, this person's just like really appreciate me and really wants to spend time with me on the phone or time with
Mm-hmm.
me in person. Really asking myself, is there reciprocity? And you know
Mm-hmm.
that when you're talking to someone and they just start unloading on you and they don't even ask you how your day was, right? So I had a
Mm-hmm.
recent incident last month where I met someone online and I was like, ooh,
Mm-hmm.
conversation is good, you know? And I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking, oh, I got stuff to do. Maybe making this 30-minute conversation. But then he just started telling me certain stories about his past. And it was like about ex-wives and ex-girlfriends. And I was like, how does this have to do with anything about what we're us getting to know each other? This is the
Right.
first conversation. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And I remember letting the conversation go on for about 2.5 hours, right? And the
Whoa.
reason why I let it go on so long, because I had time. I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
errands in the background. I'm walking my dog. But I remember before I got off the phone with him, I was like, I just need to like clear my head. Like I gotta get off the phone and like clear my head. I gotta study. You know, I gotta listen to a podcast or something. Like I need to clear my head. And I
Mm-hmm.
sit on the couch for like 30 minutes and I was exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to take a nap. And I was like, oh my gosh, why do I feel this way? 2 days later, I remember remembering my notes from my dating coach because that's how I learned about energy vampires through her.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yes. I said, anytime he asked me a question about myself, it never lasted more than 2 to 3 minutes. And he would quickly change the subject and it went right back to him and his
Yes.
situation. And I was like, no. And my friend was telling me earlier this month, she said, Keisha, you let things linger too long. You need to cut
Mm-hmm.
things off.
Yeah.
And I literally stopped feeding the vampire. I remember he would like, one time I was at work, he was like, let's FaceTime. And then after he FaceTiming me, I'm like, I'm at work. What's
Mm-hmm.
wrong with you? Did you even ask if I was camera ready before you just said, I'm going to FaceTime you because I have a break? That's nice. It's 10 a.m. I don't have a break. I'm going to
Right.
take my break till lunchtime. What makes you think that your time is more valuable than mine, that you could just go and video chat me and thinking I can't respond? Because I'm going to literally like, you could look at the wall the whole time because I got shit to do. I'm working. So that was the biggest lesson, was like recognizing it so quickly,
Mm-hmm.
calling it out for what it is. And I don't have to necessarily tell the person you're an energy vampire, but I can mention to them, hey, it just feels a little bit one-sided. Conversation kind of always reverts back to you and it's
Mm-hmm.
rarely on me. I asked you how your day is. You don't ask me how my day is. I say a great thing that happened to me at work today. You don't say congratulations. You just kind of steamroll over it and then talk something about you. So my biggest lesson, I will say, and how I recognize it is, once I recognize it, call it out, see if
Mm-hmm.
it can be self-corrected. And if it can't be, just cut it off and move on, because it's not going to get better. And it's a personality trait that's hard for them to like really get rid of because they're so used to being in a self-centered universe.
Well, dang. Well, let's practice our steak. We're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. Hey, listeners, welcome back to Baggage Claim. I am here with my friend and guest, Keisha, and we are talking about the what we do in the shadows. Just kidding, energy vampires. We're talking about that and kind of what that looks like, because when I asked Keisha what she wanted to talk about, this was it. Because I feel like you're feeling, I don't know, more energized now that you've gotten rid of them.
Very much
So
so.
so for to give an example, right? I think we talked about good energy, bad energy, the vampires, and kind of what that looks like. And I asked you on our break why this was going to be the baggage that you were going to unload. And we'll kind of just go from there. So I feel like you just stepped into your birthday like sexy 39 and you started it in Miami. And I feel like my birthday was a month before yours. And I feel like it's always a time to like look at your life, especially in like the mid 30s, like where you look at your life and you think, all right, the rest is still unwritten, you know? And you've got to like make it for yourself. So What did that look like for you? And how did that lead you to kind of recognizing that you needed, I don't know, a crucifix, a steak, and some garlic?
I will say going into my 39th birthday, I wanted to come into it with peace.
Mm-hmm.
I was very overwhelmed the month of October. And previously, every October, I always feel like it's such a pressure cooker for me. There's so much things I need to go on to prep for my birthday. And I was like, this year, I just wanted to go into it with ease, with peace, and not feel overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you know, right before you were turning 37, that was like the ultimate goal. Go into it with peace. So I was on that
Yes.
same vibe. Girl,
Mm-hmm.
I was really like, whatever is no longer serving me, whatever is taking up too much of my time and energy has to go. And so I
Mm-hmm.
had two incidents in October that really just made me be like, you know what? I thought I was done with energy vampires. Looks like I let two creep up into my system again. I need to
Mm-hmm.
get rid of these. So one incident, I was part of this popular social group in the DFW, and I was on this committee. On that committee, we talk about different things, make hard decisions regarding the group, and so forth. And when we have disagreements, sometimes you can have a little back and forth. And this
Mm-hmm.
particular incident, um, we were having a disagreement, seeing things from a different perspective, and I ended up going back and forth with someone for almost 2 hours. And
Oh,
I realized, yes, in that
that's
moment,
a long time.
very long time, especially as you're like typing this, and I'm like
Mm-hmm.
typing errors, walking my dog, got grammatical errors. So I'm just trying to get my point across. And this person is not letting up. And I realized after that conversation, I was hurt. I was drained. Some things were said that I felt like was a very personal attack on me
Mm-hmm.
that was very unwarranted.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you know what? Their time is different than my time.
Mm-hmm.
My emotional capacity for dealing with this type of level of pettiness is gone. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have the time that they have. I don't have the time to go out of my way to call someone a name or disparage their character. It's just not
Right.
in me anymore. And I
Right. It
had to
doesn't
realize
align. Mm-mm.
exactly. And I had to realize, I said, why after every exchange with this person, I feel drained? I
Icky.
just feel like, yes, I can't go on. All the 10 things I need to do that day, I need to study. I
Mm-hmm.
no longer couldn't concentrate on studying. I
Mm-hmm.
had to like talk to a friend to help calm me down because I was a
Mm-hmm.
little bit wrought up. And I was like, energy vampire. And I realized that I need to cut off this energy vampire because they tend to leech on to every word I say and want to comment and go back and forth about it when no comment is warranted. And so that was the first incident. I was like, you know what? After yesterday's exchange, it's not in my best interest to be in this group. And
Mm-hmm.
I will be leaving the committee because I just
Mm-hmm.
don't have the time and capacity to put into this anymore. That was the first incident. Second incident, I remember still October, still very early October, actually mid October now, on Bumble,
Mm-hmm.
connected with someone online. Was like,
Mm-hmm.
great, let's have a phone conversation. It was a Sunday. And as everybody knows about Sundays, those are like your days to kind of like prep for the Mondays, the dread up Monday
Reset.
work week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you want to reset. And I remember it was about 6 p.m. I just came in from like, grocery shopping and we're having a first conversation. I'm excited, new person, great online banter, really curious to get to know this person. And I remember being on the call with him for 2 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he would ask me a few questions about myself. I would have time to answer them, but there was no follow on, right? It was like I answered and then he quickly changed the subject to like something about him going on his
Mm-hmm.
personal life, whether it's an incident with him and his brother fighting, whether it's a incident about like his ex-wife, giving me braggadocious details about his ex-girlfriend. And I remember leaving that conversation and right before I got off the conversation, I was like, oh, I have to do some homework and study.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I need to clear my head. I'm kind of tired. I get off the phone and I remember sitting on my couch and having a little bit of headache and just sitting there in silence for 30 minutes. I'm like, why am I so tired? Maybe it was just a long day, kind of brushing it off. And
Mm-hmm.
then 2 days later, I was like, energy vampire, because I could have this same conversation with a man who values reciprocity in conversation, talk for 4 amazing hours, and feel so refreshed. Person, there was no reciprocity. Everything was one sided, self-centered convo, always revolving around that person. Anytime it got redirected to me and what I had going in my life, oh, short little blip, let me bring it back to myself and ignore what she just said. And
Right.
so for me, I had to immediately recognize we're not lingering before you get in, as you go into your 39th birthday, no more lingering. Let me cut this off. I'm going to cut it off in a very gentle way. So when I came to you and I was like, let's talk about energy vampires, because I think it's something that people are doing very unconsciously. Sometimes people are doing it very intentional,
Mm-hmm.
but they're easy to spot. Sometimes you may mask them as like, oh, it's just my partner wanting to, tell me about their day,
Mm-hmm.
but when someone is telling you about their day and you have no buy-in, are they really telling you about their day, or they're just kind of using you as like a sounding board?
Right. Like just do the voice memo on your phone if that's what you want. Like speak into the void. But there's a person here that's here that has opinions and will respond and also would love a follow up and kind of building off of that, making real connections. Because then when it only feels one sided, when it is only one sided, you feel, even if they aren't aware of it, it's making you feel less valuable. It's making you feel, and I say you, like if I'm speaking for myself, like feel disposable. And I don't like that feeling, you know?
Exactly. And it's really about reclaiming your time.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you start to feel overwhelmed, I ask people to challenge yourself. Well, then how can you reclaim your time? What can you cut off? Are there
Mm-hmm.
any energy vampires in your life that are like sucking you dry? Is it a job? You know, is it your manager?
Mm-hmm.
Is it someone you're dating? Is it a friend? Is it a family member? What energy vampire can you cut off to reclaim your time? And so for me, that was like the one thing that I realized I let linger too long. I
Mm-hmm.
let people be able to call me at 3 a.m. in the morning to vent. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, no more. My sleep is
Right.
valuable. I'm not saying I'm aging, getting old, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
as I get older, I value sleep. I value beauty sleep. And so as we get older, recognize that emotional capacity,
Mm-hmm.
recognize what energy vampire is preventing you from meeting your goals,
Mm-hmm.
and that you can do better without and is no longer serving you and how
Mm-hmm.
you want to move forward in life.
So for you, do you think it's because you do have the gift of listening and communicating that you let things linger? Or do you think it's because you're looking for the best? Or is it one of those things where you just can't let it go?
I'm one of those people that's like very optimistic, almost to a
Mm-hmm.
default. I
You're
always believe.
very optimistic. I can say that. You
Thank you.
really are. It's a blessing. It's a pleasure, you know? Better
Thank
than
you.
dystopian. My God, I used to be a glass half full person, and then I experienced life in very intense ways. And so it changed me to at least there's a glass kind of person. And that's where I don't need it full or empty. I'm grateful for the glass. And I feel like you're one of those like, but the glass is half full, right? Like in such a
Yes.
good way. And you need that. You need all of that. You know what I mean?
Yes. And no, and thank you for explaining that, because I always believe the good in people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always believe there is grace for those who seek it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I always feel like people can self-correct,
Mm-hmm.
and always optimistic about that. But I have to realize that people don't always have to self-correct on my timeline.
Right.
Let them self-correct on their timeline and see how that plays out. And if they
Mm-hmm.
want to come back to the fold and have a reciprocal relationship with me, I'm all
Mm-hmm.
for that. But when it becomes so blatantly self-centered with
Mm-hmm.
with the way they communicate with me, I
Mm-hmm.
just have to like let it go and move on and pray they find their way and realize that if you want to continue pursuing anything with me, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
personal, professional relationship, reciprocity is at the core of this
Right.
relationship. And it
Right.
needs to be at the center of how we communicate with each other.
And so for you, do you feel like, especially this past birthday, right? Do you feel like your viewpoint on viewing the best in everyone has changed at all?
And I'm very like not a surface person with most
Mm-hmm.
people. Like I'm going to ask you questions to really get to know you better. I'm just curious by nature. Always been a
Right.
very inquisitive kid.
So when you decided, you know what, you're a vampire, you're done, I've cut you off, because you said you do it nicely. And I don't know if you heard my episode, but for me, when I'm done, it's like you're dead to me, which means you are 6 feet, you are buried 6 feet under the ground. Then your body's been exhumed, cremated, and your ashes are somewhere because I threw them out the window. That's how it feels. It's very abrupt. It's very direct. It's very, we're done. Right? How do you like release the vampires? How do you do it? Are you able to separate in that way? Is it that you completely cut off the vampires, or do you like gently step away? Like, how does that look to you?
I give them boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I do is I let them know, like, hey, I would love to continue the friendship. However, there has to be a boundary and there has to be rules in how we engage with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I let them know, like, one of my really good friends, she's long winded. And we joke
Mm-hmm.
about this all the time. We could have 5 hour conversations. Out of those
Mm-hmm.
5 hours, sometimes she could take an entire hour talking. And I may not get it a word in edgewise, right?
Right.
And so I told her, I remember I told her last year, I said, I no longer have the capacity to have 5 hour conversations. It just doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work for me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
2 hours max, you know,
Mm-hmm.
1 hour ideal, 30
Mm-hmm.
minutes, great. We could just make
Right.
sure we check in with each other more often
Mm-hmm.
versus waiting so long to
Mm-hmm.
communicate and unloading so much with each other. So I
Mm-hmm.
always try to do it in a very gentle, very reasonable manner
Mm-hmm.
to see and get their buy-in,
Mm-hmm.
let them know I'm going to have to limit my time talking with you, not because I don't love you. It's just
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes you tend to unload on me and I don't always have the emotional capacity to sit and listen like I
Mm-hmm.
used to. So we have to have certain rules of engagement, right? There has to be some buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people maybe after you tell your story midway through, check in with me to see if I'm still here. Check in with me, right? To
Right.
see like, hey Keisha, what do you think? So this is what happened. What do you think about that, Keisha? Does that sound
Mm-hmm.
right, Keisha? Like, get my buy-in with me because I want to go on this journey of conversation with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to just be your sounding board.
Mm-hmm.
I have certain knowledge, I have certain experiences that I could help you do some things. So
Mm-hmm.
like take me on this journey with you. Don't leave
Mm-hmm.
me in the dust while you
Right.
just run full speed ahead with the conversation
Do you
and
think
forget that like
partially
I'm on
is
the
that
phone.
do you think partially that is a little bit of middle child syndrome, like little bit right there in the middle, like, hey, I'm still here, I'm right here, I'm waving it, like just a little Keisha, right? Like the I'm younger than everyone else Keisha, right? Showing up just a little bit, like, validate me, okay? Like, don't play in my face because I need that. There was a time where perhaps I didn't feel like I was seen or heard. And I feel like they could correlate a little bit, a tiny bit.
And it's funny you say that. I think that is a really good way to connect that dot. But I'll say this. The reason why I realized I need buy-in,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something I learned from my dating coach, which people know me. I'm gonna talk about my dating coach because she that was life coach and helped me through a lot of things. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But she was like, when you're talking with someone, it is best to check in and get their buy-in because you obviously want to make sure, are they still listening? Because they could
Right.
be literally doing something else and you have no idea. And you're
Correct.
just like, you're such a great listener. And they're like,
Right.
yeah, girl, whatever. I'm like,
Right.
doing a whole nother thing that you have no idea.
I've been on those calls. I've been that friend that accidentally was like,
we
wait,
all
what?
have. You're like, can you repeat that last line? I
I'm
think I
sorry, girl.
missed it.
I
I think
just
my
looked
phone went
up
out.
and I look, honestly, I don't know what just happened. I don't know where I was, but I blinked out and I need you to repeat yourself. I'm sorry. It happened, you know?
It
So,
does.
okay, it happens, right? We're only human. But when it's continuous, when it's literally systematic in conversations that it's one-sided, that's when it doesn't feel so good. So what would you describe, how would you describe, if we flipped the opposite, an energy giver? Like what is the energy that you want transferred? Like what would that look like?
I think the energy that I want transferred is to feel refreshed after experiencing you.
Mm-hmm.
I never should feel like, me delete this number like
Right.
today.
Blocked.
Right. Like, I need you to like get a whole new phone so they can never find me. It's more so of a thing of, you want to feel refreshed. You want to feel like experience that person was like, it's like you want to feel lighter afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
right? You want to feel a little bit joy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to feel a little bit of like happiness that you look forward to the next time you speak to them. You want to
Mm-hmm.
feel intrigued to hear more of their stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's, I feel like, is probably the best energy giver. Like when people come out with me and, we've both hosted different events, right?
Mm-hmm.
For different social groups. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like when people come out, you want to make sure they have a good time. You want
Yes.
to make sure their time was not wasted, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be the energy vampire that like invited you here and then like sucked you dry because I was like boring and I was like, non-engaging. And then you just kind of left there in your thoughts and you're just like, why am I here? I
Mm-hmm.
want you to come in lighter. I want you to cut and leave out happier. I want you
Mm-hmm.
to leave out feeling more connected to who I am as a person.
Can I say on a personal note that I too was in this organization on this said committee? And I have to say, I can appreciate your level of patience and kindness and intention and goals for what we were doing, because I feel like that is why you were there. And I have to say, it has to be, I don't know what they call, a group of vampires, but I'll call it a coven. And my God, fangs were sharp. And so I salute you for lasting that long and still left with kindness, and you're still giving. And I think that's extremely impressive. And I think that sometimes people don't recognize what they're doing, but sometimes people do. And you just got to keep the garlic up. I had to throw that in there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you. And like I said, it's just, I think, kindness to a fault and being empathetic and hoping that people self correct, but realizing that they don't have to self correct on my timeline.
Mm-hmm.
I can move on from this and I'll be okay.
So if you were going to check something in for for the topic of energy vampires, what would you be checking in?
I will be checking in, basically saying no to anyone that doesn't value reciprocity and how
Mm-hmm.
they communicate with me. I will definitely be checking in to anyone who purposely drains me,
Mm-hmm.
who purposely uses my energy. Because I've been out with people, on dates, and they'll be like, "Oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, I just love your energy," right? And so you're like, "Oh, thank you, such a compliment." And then
Mm-hmm.
you go with them, and they give you nothing, right? And you
Yes.
just sit there in
Dry.
silence,
Dry.
and they just want you to constantly entertain them. And so I'm just saying no to always being your joker.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying no to always being your tap dancing entertainment. Don't have the energy and capacity for that anymore. What I once thought was great compliments and, a great
Mm-hmm.
value I harvest, I realize is sacred and
Mm-hmm.
not everyone can be privy to it. So that's what I'm checking in.
I love that. Now, what's the souvenir that you're taking? Because I feel like what you just said was also a souvenir that I'm going to add to my repertoire.
Thank you. I think the souvenir I'm taking is a little more piece of me. I feel like I've given so many people so much of my time to my detriment.
Mm-hmm.
It's preventing me from achieving some personal goals that I put out for
Mm-hmm.
months because I was like, oh, but this person needs me to show up to this
Mm-hmm.
event. This person needs me to give my opinion on this
Mm-hmm.
perspective. This person needs me to lead the group in this way.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that, like, in trying to be helpful and kind to others and help them meet their needs,
Mm-hmm.
my needs got pushed to the wayside. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking back a little piece of my time, a little piece of an hour of rest, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
adding a bit more time to my day to just sit with my thoughts and
Mm-hmm.
not have to carry on with the pettiness that sometimes can
Mm-hmm.
perpetuate a lot of energy vampires.
I love that. I feel like this week or for this episode, if I was going to check in, I would the energy vampires of negativity. I feel like there's a lot of negativity in the atmosphere and I don't need it. I'm trying to think of the best. I'm trying to look towards a hopeful future. And the souvenir, I would say for this one would probably be making sure I'm cognizant of the energy that I'm giving and what I'm receiving. I think that that's the souvenir. It's just to be aware of, you know what, if I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I don't need to transfer that woke up on the wrong side of the bed out there. I've got to figure it out internally. I don't need to use anyone else to do that, to figure that out. Now, if I do need someone to lean on, I want to make sure that it's a reciprocated conversation. But otherwise, like, don't bring that bullshit to somebody else. I think that would be definitely one of them for me.
I feel you on that. That is like, and I think it's like, I hate to call people something and not check in with myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, before I just start calling people names, let me check in with me, because I could probably use some self-correcting, and maybe there's times where I saw myself being an energy vampire, not even knowing, but because the person allowed me to do it for so long and never checked me on it. So that was just the nature of how I communicated with them. And so now I'm so very conscious to be like, I don't have to always unload on them about my day. Like, I could give them a little bit of snippet, but I could easily, I'm always asking now, well, how was your day? What, anything going on? Anything you want to share? You know? And then sometimes when I feel like I'm going on a tangent, I tell people like, oh my God, am I rambling? Like, let me know.
I'm such a rambler.
Please.
You know, I also feel like you've got to be really careful on that fine line of trying to make sure that you are being courteous and giving to the other person, because sometimes it's easy, especially if you're like goal oriented and you kind of like an A+ student, A minus, maybe B plus, that you're so quick to be like, if someone's like, how are you doing today? You're like, I'm doing okay. How are you? You do it. It's almost so quickly, almost of a second nature to quickly deflect from yourself, because part of it is you're thinking you're being polite and manners, but also you just have to make sure that if there is something that you do need to vent, that you do need to share, that you're like, it's been a day. Let's get into it. But first, how are you? Because I think that sometimes being too courteous, even if you had the intentions to share how you're feeling, open up, could be shut down because you're automatically asking the other person, hey, how are you? You know what I mean? How are you doing? I'm fine. How are you? Like that.
Very true. And I will say that kind of spanned from, I had a friend years ago. We had a huge falling out, no longer really speak to each other. I wish we could repair it. Just never happened. And I recognize that her attachment style was probably more avoidant, which is why I could not repair it. That's a whole nother conversation, attachment styles, by the way. However, I will say, like, I would always give her precedence in our conversations on the phone, where I would like minimize my issues, right? And so when I finally had an issue that I needed to bring to the surface, I didn't get much feedback on it, or I maybe got a lot of judgment. And so it caused me to like really deflect, right? And so sometimes I have become that overtly courteous person because I'm like, who cares about my problems, right? And I'll start to minimize my issues because I just want to be like that caring friend.
Right.
And I've realized to take back my power. And it's like, no, like, you have a right to vent. You have a right to share your story. And
see if your friend will show up for you.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. See if they're going to provide any buy-in to your issue and help you resolve that problem.
So I think that's another, I feel like, souvenir to take with. But I've really enjoyed this conversation. I can say that since my birthday, when I look around, my streets are clean on both sides. I feel like I cleared out a lot of things that I just didn't need. And I think that I want to be a giver, but I want to be a balanced giver. I never want to feel like a taker, but some things I do need to take that are mine. Some things are my possessions that I do need to take. So I loved this conversation. Keisha, where can the listeners find you?
They can find me on Instagram. I'm on Keisha. I'm at Keisha, Keisha, Lorraine, Lorraine style. I know it's so long. But they can find me on Instagram. And thank you for allowing me to have this conversation. It was just something weighing on me because I had goals I needed to be met, and they weren't getting met. And I had to really assess people in my life and situations. And I was like, ooh, energy vampire, let me slay
Can
you.
I ask you a random question?
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like when you say you have goals? What's another word for goals? Are they wants? Are they like desires? Are they like, what would be another synonym that you would have for them?
They are needs. When I tell you I've been in a rental car since late July because I haven't had time to really look and buy a car because everybody is taking my time or something is taking my time. You know, my weekends are locked up with something that someone needs me to do for them.
So would it make it easier for you to reclaim it if you were like, it's not my goals, it's my needs, actually? Like I was thinking that my therapist has been trying to get me to change my verbiage. So she's been like, pick another word. And I was like,
girl,
okay.
I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that because sometimes goals can be so ambiguous, right? And it can just feel like very lofty, you know? And for me, it is really my needs. Sometimes my needs just to get 8 hours of sleep.
And it's not a crime to be like, damn, that's a need.
Like, damn, I don't have time to do 2 hours of back and forth with you on this silly little app.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining. Listeners, please, if you want to be a guest on the podcast or you want to drop a review or leave me a voicemail, all of those things you can do on my website, which is checkyourbags.com. We now have a Facebook page. So it's under Baggage Claim Podcast on Facebook. And on Instagram, we are Check In Your Baggage. I always like to say everyone has baggage. It looks different on everyone. It could be good baggage too. It doesn't always have to be bad, but the gift is you get to choose what you carry. Like you could choose like what's your carry-on and what's your purse. Keisha, thank you so much for joining. And we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you, Lauren. Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you.